I just finished a debate on TV for Turkish Radio and Television, TRT World, and I'll be informing all of you when that's going to be out. It was a very interesting discussion on should we tax red meat for public health benefits. So I'll be putting a link in my profile sometime when this is going to be published. Today I want to talk about the calls for an EU army. You might have seen that French President Emmanuel Macron has already expressed support for the creation of an EU army, and only recently German Chancellor Angela Merkel, in a speech in front of the European Parliament in Strasbourg, she also expressed support for an EU army. Basically, what you have now in the European Union, you have different defense participations, cooperation between the member states. For instance, since this year, you actually have PESCO. PESCO is a structured defense cooperation between 25 member states. So you don't have the participation of the UK, Denmark, and Malta. And basically, these countries try to integrate forces by cooperating together and seeing how they can work together in case of an attack. An EU army, however, would have the ability to preemptively strike. The difficulty right now is that for years we've had this debate about EU armies, but we don't really know what everyone means by it. What does it actually mean? There's no real proposal on the table whatsoever. And the risk from abroad that they continuously talk about that we need to defend ourselves against is the same as it was on the Cold War, and we still face the same difficulties as on the Cold War. So, for instance, you have in Europe the Suwałki Gap. So basically, if you look on the map, and I recommend you pull up a map, and then you find the gap between Kaliningrad, which is a part in continental Europe which belongs to Russia, and Belarus. Between that, you have a 60-mile border between Lithuania and Poland. That border is basically the only stretch that connects the European Union of most of the member states to Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. So Belarus is a country that's of course very friendly to Russia, and Russia could choose to close that gap and then cut off the Baltics. And since it's only 60 miles, you'll have about 2 hours to decide if you intervene or not. So that basically tells you what the EU army would have to be. So let's imagine you do have an EU army that is supposed to act defensively against this kind of action, because that's the greatest threat you could arguably say is there monetarily for the European Union. Well, in that case, you cannot have a system where you have sort of 27 generals and they all need to decide unanimously. No, you need a command. You need a command that has clear instructions on what it can and cannot do, and it can intervene. It's impossible to have a debate in Parliament on these questions. So that is of course the big challenge. Like, the big question is, are you willing to give that much power to the European Union to act in a military fashion? We all know that states, basically to exist and to have power, need three different aspects right now. They have the control over central banking, they need control over fiscal revenue, and they need military control. That's exactly why in Switzerland, for instance, you still have a system in which income tax is actually sent to the capital by the individual cantons instead of levying it themselves. And that's what they want to do in the European Union the exact opposite way, by saying that the European Union needs its direct income. I'm very skeptical towards an EU army. I think it's just one of the things they do to create actually that super state that many Eurosceptics have been talking about for a long time. I'm not a fan of it at all. I think it creates big danger. If you think it's a great idea, just imagine if the political person you fear most would be in charge of it. So just imagine, well, I mean, you could have a leader of the European Union such as Emmanuel Macron, but you might as well have somebody like Marine Le Pen. So the question of government is always, how much power do you give government, and could you imagine that power being held by the person you really dislike? So that's really my position on the EU army, but please comment down below what you think, and thank you for watching.